Let's break down some multiple choice questions. I'll pick a course and we'll break down 4 possible examples of questions you may see in the exams. This is going to be super helpful, not just to get through and see answered questions, but also let's learn from them. This video is now on the last course, Ontario Real Estate Salesperson Program, Simulation Session 2, Exam Master MCQ video breakdowns with me. Just quickly, if you are looking for that additional support to pass these exams fast and efficient, look to the Exam Master mini courses in the description below from C1 all the way to SIMS 2. More on that later in the video, but let's just dive right into the computer.
Okay guys, we're just at question 1 here. If you've seen me do this before, we're going to read them and break them down. This is SIMS 2. We're into long-worded, 95% long-worded scenario-based questions. We'll just read them all, find out what's correct, maybe more importantly, what's incorrect. Let's just break them down. Top left, deep breath. 1, you are representing a commercial tenant who is negotiating a 5-year lease for an office unit. Okay. The tenant is growing a professional service firm and expects that within 2 or 3 years, they may either outgrow the space or restructure their business. During the lease negotiations, the landlord insists on full control over who occupies the premise. Your tenant asks how can they protect themselves and which clause should be recommended recommending including the lease. Okay, you're going to get a few questions like this for sure. It's like, which clause do you recommend? It's like, I'll give you a scenario and what do you recommend? Then you should read them. You should get at least a few like this. So that's why I wanted to put this one on. I might even have a second one in here like this too. I'm not sure. But a termination clause allowing the tenant to end the lease at any time with 60 days notice. Early termination rights are rarely granted type thing. This would not be it without significant costs or the standard way tenants manage. This is not how you would manage future flexibility, that's for sure. I'd move on to B, a permitted use clause limiting the tenant's business operations to professional office use only. This as well wouldn't really help the situation they're in as far as like the leaving. So I'd move on from there as well. A rent abatement clause allowing the tenant to stop paying rent if the space becomes unsuitable for their business needs will also be very rarely be a granted type thing. You might be able to get away with it, but this would most likely be rejected by the landlord. I move on to D, and even if you've kind of cross-eliminated yourself, always read the last one. An assignment and sublet clause permitting the tenant to assign or sublet the premises with the landlord's consent that cannot be unreasonably withheld. This would be good. Provides a tenant with flexibility to exit or transfer the lease if business needs change while still protecting the landlord's interest to a certain extent. Okay, D there, answer and move on. Expect a few like that for sure. Which clause to recommend, suggest, insert, that type of thing. 2, top left, deep breath. You're representing a buyer who is purchasing a commercial property. During due diligence, the buyer reviews the seller's financials and confirms that the property produces a stabilized net operating income of $180,000 per year. The seller is asking $2.4 million for the property. Your buyer asked you to confirm whether the numbers make sense using the income approach. Based on the information provided, which component of the income value cap rate relationship must be calculated to assess the seller's claim, and what is the correct result? Okay, so which one is like missing type thing? You might get a couple like this as well. This is essentially a math question. So you'd kind of just go through them all. You'd pop up your little calculator and you do it. If you don't know how to do it yet, we're going to break it down, of course. You're going to see cap rate questions often. I think I even have another one coming up too, because I've heard as many as 15 cap rate questions on a 46 question exam. It can be very high, and they mix it up like this. So the missing component is the capitalization rate calculated by dividing the net operating income by the purchase price, resulting in a cap rate of 7.5. So we know that the missing thing is cap rate, that's for sure. But is it 7.5? This maybe they try to trick you a little bit with their wording, but let's just keep it hovered over if you don't know. Anything you think you don't know, always leave it hovered over. B, the missing component is net operating income calculated by multiplying the purchase price by the cap rate, resulting in an NOI of 192. Doesn't even make any sense, really, does it? We know it's already there. It's not the missing component. I move on from there. The missing component is property value, calculated by dividing the NOI by the cap rate, resulting in a value of $2.25 million. Also, we know that's not the case. Let's go. The missing component is gross income, which must be calculated before any cap rate analysis can be performed. And this can confuse people because, okay, let's know it's not these two. And maybe you're just like, oh, the missing component is gross income. Like, is that related to like net operating income, right? So this can kind of confuse you to a certain extent. Let's just bring up a note here, and it's going to show you the formula as well. Using the IRV, basically triangle, income divided by value equals 0.075 or 7.5, which is this allows the buyer to assess whether the asking price aligns with the market cap rates. The wording of this question, again, is meant to confuse you. Depending on which version of the C2 exam you get, you might get one or two questions that ask missing components. What is missing type thing, instead of just a straight up math question. They're throwing in a couple different ones these days. Read each question carefully. Refer to the Exam Master fundamentals. So in the Exam Master mini course, there's also amazing fundamentals. Refer to those to stay calm. Okay, answer there A, and move on. 3, top left, deep breath. A buyer client is reviewing 2 different commercial investment properties. Property A is newer, fully leased to tenants, and located in a prime area with stable demand. Okay. Property B is older, has shorter lease terms, and is located in a secondary market with higher vacancy risk. Okay. During your discussion, the buyer says property B has a higher cap rate, so it must be the better deal because it will give me more profit. Which statement best explains the role of a cap rate and how the buyer should interpret them? That's right. Okay. Another cap rate question. Let's go to A. Let's try to break this down. A higher cap rate always means a property is more profitable and therefore the better investment, regardless of risk or location. Higher cap rate does not automatically mean the better investment. It often reflects higher perceived risk rather than guaranteed profitability. But we're going to break that down as well. A higher cap rate generally reflects higher risk, while lower cap rates often include lower risk and more stable income, even if the purchase price is higher. Okay, let's leave it hover over here. This sounds really good to me. Cap rates are used to determine the financing terms offered by lenders and do not relate to investment risk or value. Cap rates are value tools based on income and value. They are not lending metrics and are closely tied to risk. That's for sure. I'd move on from there. D, cap rate only applies to residential rental properties and should not be used to compare commercial investment opportunities. Cap rates are primarily used in commercial real estate to compare income producing properties. So I'd move on from there. Basically, B is the answer. Cap rates reflect the market's assessment of risk and return. Property B, higher cap rate likely signals greater risk, while properties A, lower cap rate reflects the stability and lower perceived risk. That is generally how it works. And go back through this question if you need to kind of like start understanding cap rate, stuff like that. And again, refer to the Exam Master mini course that really breaks it down. Okay, B, answer and move on. Last question, 4, top left, deep breath. You are representing the landlord of a busy shopping center anchored by several national tenants. The landlord is negotiating a new lease with a retail tenant whose business model includes seasonal closures and limited operating hours. Okay, the landlord is concerned that dark storefronts could negatively impact foot traffic. The landlord asks you which clause should be included. Okay, another which clause should be included. So let's just go through these all and find out which one it is. An operating covenant clause. Okay, if you don't know, move on. A permitted use clause. Okay, a rent commencement clause. An occupancy clause. Okay, so you kind of just, if you don't know, you got to kind of break it down. All right, let's start over here. A permitted use clause. Permitted use clause controls what the tenant may do, not whether or when they must be open for business. Rent commencement clause. This basically addresses payment timing, not so much operational obligations or storefront hour type thing. D, this is basically protects the tenant from paying rent too early. It does not obligate them to stay open or operate continuously. The answer is an operating covenant clause. This protects the landlord by basically requiring the tenant to actively operate their business, which is especially important in shopping centers, basically malls, right? You'll see, there's nobody in this mall. Why is there a store always open? Because they have to be, right? Because that's included in their lease and operating covenant clause. Okay, answer A there, guys. Okay, guys, 4 really good questions there. Go back through these if need be. We'll see you right at the computer.
I really hope that helped, guys. And as mentioned, if you are looking for the additional support, look to the Exam Master mini courses in the description below. It's mini notes, mini quizzes, my exact fundamentals. I used to pass all exams first try and in 4.5 months. And I also do video breakdowns of the 4 types of questions you may see in exams. Those links in the description below are also value links for the time being for the YouTube family. I'll add that link to the exammaster.ca right here as well if needed. If you have any questions at all, DM, email, comment on this video. I get back to everyone. My name is Callum Moore, eXp Realty real estate broker here in Ontario. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.